Hello everyone and welcome to our session. I'm Dr. Eris Thorne and today we are exploring the longevity secret of Silicon Valley. We are going to dive into a topic that sits right at the intersection of high-tech ambition and deep earth biology. You've likely heard stories of tech billionaires investing fortunes into life extension, but the heart of this movement isn't a digital algorithm, it's a compound called rapamycin, originally found in the soil of a remote island. This drug has sparked a massive interest in the biohacking community. As we see here in our key themes, there is a significant gap between these enthusiasts and standard medical practice. While some see it as a miracle, many doctors remain cautious. We'll be investigating why that divide exists. Our roadmap for today is comprehensive. We will look at the mTOR pathway, the body's metabolic switch, and discuss autophagy, the process where cells recycle damaged components to stay healthy. From the history of Easter Island to current human trials, we will assess if this is truly the future of aging. Building on what we just covered regarding the modern hype, let's dive into the extraordinary history of this molecule. It didn't start in a high-tech Silicon Valley lab, but in one of the most remote places on Earth. In the mid-1960s, a Canadian expedition arrived on Rapa Nui, also known as Easter Island. They weren't looking for an anti-aging miracle, they were simply collecting soil samples to study the island's unique biological environment. Within those samples, they isolated a bacterium called Streptomyces hygroscopicus. It produced a natural compound that the researchers named rapamycin, paying homage to the island itself. Its clinical journey began not in longevity, but in pharmacology. Initially tested as an antifungal, it eventually gained FDA approval as a potent immunosuppressant used primarily to prevent organ rejection in transplant patients. The longevity pivot happened almost by accident. Researchers realized that the same mechanism that suppressed the immune system was also slowing down the fundamental processes of cellular aging across multiple species. This led to the identification of mTOR, the mechanistic target of rapamycin. As we move forward, think of mTOR as the body's master metabolic switch. It dictates whether a cell stays in growth mode or enters repair mode, a process known as autophagy. Let's look closer at how that switch actually works. Building on what we just covered, let's dive into the master switch itself, mTOR. Short for mechanistic target of rapamycin, this protein is essentially the air traffic controller for your cellular metabolism. When nutrients like amino acids and insulin are high, mTOR is on, putting the body in growth mode. This is vital for building muscle and healing, but constant activation is linked to accelerated aging and age-related diseases. Conversely, when mTOR is off, triggered by fasting or low energy, the body enters repair mode. This activates autophagy, a process where your cells literally clean house by breaking down and recycling damaged components. It's a fundamental biological trade-off. You cannot be in high-performance building mode and deep cleaning repair mode at the same time. Longevity, as we are discovering, depends on the balance between these two states. This is the rapamycin effect. Rapamycin acts as a molecular brake on mTOR. It mimics the life-extending benefits of caloric restriction by shifting the cell toward that repair state, even when nutrients are present. Next, we'll actually simulate this toggle to see the effects in real time. In this simulation, we will explore the balance between cellular growth and maintenance controlled by the mTOR pathway. Nutrients are the primary signal for mTOR activation. High levels promote cell growth but suppress cellular cleaning. When nutrients are high and mTOR is active, the cell prioritizes synthesis. However, this eventually leads to an accumulation of cellular waste. Rapamycin is a potent inhibitor of mTOR. It can trigger autophagy, the process where cells eat and recycle their own damaged parts. By lowering nutrient signals and adding rapamycin, we force the cell to switch from growth to cleanup mode, significantly reducing waste levels. Observe how the waste level decreases. This cellular housekeeping is a key mechanism for increasing longevity and preventing age-related diseases. Building on that cellular housekeeping mechanism we just covered, let's examine the hard evidence from the lab. This isn't just theoretical, it's backed by decades of rigorous testing across multiple biological models. In studies involving yeast, flies, and most significantly, mice, researchers have seen a consistent lifespan extension. We are looking at increases of up to 30%. To put that in perspective, that would be like a human living well past 100 with the vitality of a much younger person. Take a look at this bar chart. It compares the average lifespan of control mice against those treated with rapamycin. The difference is statistically massive, and it's one of the primary reasons rapamycin is considered the gold standard in longevity pharmacology today. As shown in Figure 1, this efficacy is consistent, but as I often tell my colleagues, longevity without health is a hollow victory. That's where the systemic benefits come in. The treated subjects didn't just live longer, they lived better. We observed enhanced heart health, sharper cognitive function, and even a delay in the onset of cancer. It seems that by modulating mTOR, we are addressing the root cause of multiple age-related declines simultaneously. With this evidence in mind, we're going to dive into a quick check of the history and mechanism to ensure these foundations are clear before we tackle the regulatory hurdles. Building on that complexity, let's explore why longevity drugs like rapamycin remain largely in the shadows of general medicine. Despite the promising data we just reviewed on page 6, several systemic barriers prevent these discoveries from reaching your local clinic. The first issue is purely economic. Rapamycin is an older, off-patent drug. Because it is generic and inexpensive, there is no massive profit incentive for pharmaceutical companies to invest the hundreds of millions of dollars required for the gold standard human clinical trials needed for new FDA indications. Then we have the philosophy of modern medicine itself. We currently operate under what many call a sick care model, which prioritizes the treatment of acute symptoms after they appear. Longevity science, however, requires a fundamental shift toward preventative care, maintaining metabolic health and cellular function long before a diagnosis occurs. Finally, there is a significant regulatory hurdle. The FDA does not currently classify aging as a disease. Without that classification, there is no clear regulatory pathway for drugs that aim to slow the aging process in otherwise healthy individuals, leaving many doctors hesitant to move beyond traditional protocols. Building on our discussion about why many doctors are hesitant to prescribe rapamycin for aging, we must address the clinical reality. This is a potent pharmaceutical with a significant side effect profile that requires respect and rigor. One of the biggest hurdles in this field is the dose-response confusion. As shown in this comparison, high-dose rapamycin used in organ transplants is meant to suppress the immune system entirely. However, for longevity, we use much lower intermittent doses. This longevity protocol aims to modulate mTOR without the severe toxicity seen in transplant wards. Even at low doses, nuisance side effects are common. The most frequent are aphthous ulcers, essentially painful mouth sores, and changes in your lipid profile, like elevated triglycerides or cholesterol. This happens because the mTOR toggle we discussed earlier also controls how our cells handle fats and sugars. Because of these metabolic shifts, I cannot emphasize this enough, DIY longevity is dangerous. Regular monitoring of biomarkers through blood tests is essential to ensure that the pursuit of a longer life doesn't inadvertently cause metabolic dysfunction or insulin resistance. Building on our discussion of risks and the necessity of monitoring, let's explore where the science stands today in the real world. We are now entering what we call the human frontier, examining how theoretical research is being applied in active clinical trials. First, the Pearl Trial Participatory Evaluation of Aging with Rapamycin for Longevity is a landmark study. It is one of the first double-blind, placebo-controlled trials designed to see if rapamycin can actually slow biological aging markers in humans. This is where we move past anecdotal evidence and into standardized dosing protocols. Then we have the Dog Aging Project. The triad study is particularly significant because dogs share our environment and age similarly to us. By studying their heart health and cognitive function on rapamycin, researchers are gathering translational data that is far more applicable to human biology than previous rodent studies. We also have to acknowledge the biohacking community and off-label use. Because formal medical approval for aging takes decades, a growing number of individuals are essentially running their own informal experiments. While this creates a wealth of community data, it also carries significant risks without professional medical supervision. I want to highlight the note at the bottom. Everything we discuss here is still ongoing. Rigorous peer review is the only way this moves from a biohack to a recognized clinical treatment. Leo, I know you've been looking into the regulatory side of this. Thanks, Leo, for that insightful perspective on those systemic hurdles. As we wrap up our session today, it's time to step back and look at the future of longevity through a holistic lens. We focused heavily on pharmacology, particularly the precision modulation of the mTOR pathway. But as we saw in our toggle simulation earlier, rapamycin is a tool, not a magic bullet. It acts as a sophisticated metabolic lever that requires careful, evidence-based application rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. However, that tool is only effective when placed upon a sturdy foundation of lifestyle. As we've discussed, diet, sleep, and exercise are the essential partners to pharmacology. One cannot replace the other. They must work in synergy to truly influence the biological aging process. As you navigate this frontier, remember our key takeaways. Prioritize personalized protocols by consulting longevity specialists and always stay grounded in the clinical data rather than following the latest hype. Your approach to aging should be as rigorous as the science we've explored today. From the soil of Easter Island to the complex mechanisms of cellular senescence, we have covered a vast frontier today. I hope you leave this session with a balanced and empowered view of the future. Thank you, Maya, Leo, and Sarah, for your fantastic engagement. Before we conclude, I'd like to hear your final thoughts on a big picture question.